I love that. And it's weird how it works, and I'm sure it's done the same when you put these films together. And I find that this happens a lot. Before I do a show, I kind of go over in my head to kind of different, I might bring 6 or 7 or 8 different songs, thinking which way it's going to go, and I'll be prepared. If it goes that way, I got that song or whatever. But I had to, I'm sitting here in front of in the studio in front of the computer, and I'm thinking, okay, which song to play for next break, right? And I already had the cursor on it. And you already went to exactly where I was going to end it at, which was, it's just so freeing. Because the song, I don't know if you've heard of Mike Oldfield.
Oh, yeah. I love Mike Oldfield.
Yeah, me too. So he's my all-time favorite musical artist of all.
I think Tubular Bells was one of my first songs I learned on the piano.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. What a good one, too. Scare everybody that still has remembrances of...
The Exorcist?
The Exorcist. Yeah. I can think of it there for a second. Yeah. We're sitting here this morning chatting with Daniel Schmidt, the creator of the incredible Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds documentary. Teaches at his Breathe True Yoga Center in Ontario, and he's working on his new film, Samadhi. Welcome back, Daniel.
Thank you.
We got about, 16, 17 minutes here? Well, maybe not quite, but the new one, Samadhi, it's coming out in, is it next year? Is it this year or next year?
That's a good question. It's, my intention was to put it out this year, but the process I described to you, it is an organic process. So, I'm feeding it every day, and it's growing, and at some point it'll be blossomed into what it's meant to be. So I'll know it when it's done, but at this point I don't really know exactly. It's very hard to create movies this way. So
yeah, you just got to let it blossom.
Yes. And what I may do is actually, because it will be in 4 parts, I may just release the first part and then, a month later the second part. That type of thing.
Right. Now, I wrote so much stuff down from going through that. There's so many amazing concepts that you cover in your first one. One of the things that I didn't know, because I'm not really a religious type. I make the distinction between spiritual and religious. But I didn't know that the Gospel of John, in the beginning there was the Word,
yes.
But it actually wasn't that?
Yeah, the word was logos in the original.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. And yeah, the term logos is a very, very interesting term, and some of these Greek philosophers like Heraclitus used to use the word logos to refer to, almost like, the eschaton, or the, that from which everything arises and returns to.
I mean, that makes so much more sense than word.
Yeah, like why would you, what is stupid?
Yeah, why, what just goes to show that they were totally in their minds.
Yes.
They weren't anywhere else.
Well, and it's interesting, like I grew up as a Catholic, actually, and, for me, it's only in recent years that I've started to revisit Christianity, and I'm actually exploring some of the teachings of some of the Christian mystics for the film Samadhi. And it seems like in Christianity, a lot of these truths are very heavily encrypted, more so than some other religions. But also, I question at some point whether some of the teachings were actually stripped out, maybe, because when you look at things like the Gospel of Thomas, or some of the Gnostic Gospels, there are really amazing teachings in there that point towards samadhi, and they point towards, the same things that the Buddha was teaching, the kingdom of heaven is within, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love all that stuff. I have this friend of mine we've had him on the show a few times too, but he lives in Wales. And he's an Egyptologist, and amongst other things. But he's been studying, for these last 10 years or so, or maybe more, with the Coptic people.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the things that he's told me about them is just unreal. He said that they consider themselves the first people of that area of the world, and that they have, I can't remember whether they said hundreds or thousands, but an awful lot of old scrolls and such buried in the desert. I find that interesting. And then some of the things he came out with, that, some of the scrolls and such that he's seen, I'm like, yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. There's so much that should be shared that isn't.
Yeah, it's quite fascinating to trace the origins of some of these mainstream religions and the symbology, like even the cross, like the Coptic cross is more like the Ankh from the Egyptian tradition, and
yeah.
These things have when you trace them back, it's quite fascinating what the actual etymology will reveal in a lot of cases. And I'm quite fascinated with the Egyptian tradition as well, and that's actually a big part of what's coming through in the next film as well. It's informing it, and I think there were certain periods of Egyptian history where they had really tapped into, like certain individuals actually really brought out these ancient teachings in a way that is more understandable, and then they would get lost for periods, and then someone else would pop up who would be saying the same thing again. So Akhenaten was one who I really resonate with, and a lot of his, if you look at the artwork of his time period, very, very different than what came immediately before, and it's like he was depicting the inner connection to the inner energies, and to like those images of the sun reaching down with little ankhs. Each arm of the sun has like a little ankh on it, and and he's depicting the inner world, I believe, in the same way that the ancient yogis and the rishis were depicting, just using the Egyptian symbology.
Yeah, I have another guest that I had on who deals, he's, if not the world's leading expert, he's one of them, on the elongated skull phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that, what was her name? Was it not Nefertiti, but it wasn't Nefertiti. Was she the last goddess?
She was the partner of Akhenaten.
Yeah, I don't think it's Nefertiti. It's, what's her name? What's the famous one?
Cleopatra?
It might have been Cleopatra. No, maybe it was Nefertiti.
I think it was Nefertiti and both Akhenaten. They have the children with the elongated heads and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, that to me, that stuff is just so interesting.
Yeah. Well, all the artwork from that period is just fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and very, very realistic as well. Like very, just the art itself as art is quite advanced as
beautiful.
Well, which indicates that the people who were doing it and tapping into the art at that time were doing something that was outside of the normal cultural confines or structures at that time. So they were getting it from someplace else,
Yeah, actually, there's somebody else I wanted to mention. I haven't had her on, and I'm going to really try and get her on. I lived in Amsterdam in I'm going to put my age out here now, in the early 80s, fresh out of high school, moved to Amsterdam. And I came across this book. It was by this nun by the name of Meinrad Craighead. Mm-hmm. And I just come across her again recently. She's still alive. I'm going to try and get in touch with her, but her artwork, it was her artwork that blew me away. I think she's got 4 or 5 different art books out, and the little stories and things that go with the books. Yeah, if you ever get a chance, check out Meinrad Craighead. Mm-hmm. She's just a very interesting artist, and what you had expressed earlier about not caring what comes out, in the sense, yeah, of course you care, but you're not for monetary gains or this or that. You're just being an artist and allowing it to come through. I really got that sense of her drawings, that she's just letting stuff through. And yeah, she's wicked, whether or not you had heard of her. But
it sounds interesting.
Yeah, she is
right up my alley.
Yeah, that's why I thought, that you might like it.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, it's been amazing. And what usually happens here, that I do all this prep work, and I've got pages of stuff, and I don't use any of it. Mm-hmm. And there's just so many different things that we didn't get to talk about, because there's just so much that you put into this one documentary that you couldn't talk about everything in a 2-hour period. there's no way to really get in depth. But, man, I sure thank you for coming onto the program and for sharing some of your sacred space with our sacred space.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
It really has. And one of these days, the next time, every once in a while, I get out to Haudenosaunee lands out in Ontario, and if I get out there, I'll come and pay and visit and check out your retreat center.
You'd be very welcome.
Cool. Awesome. Well, once again, Daniel Schmidt, an amazing creator of Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds, and can check that out on YouTube or any of his web pages, which I have on the station. So you can always go there and check and get out his website, or just Google on YouTube Inner Worlds, Outer Worlds, and they will come up. And you find out more about him. And really, really, they are worth a watch with the video and the music. They're just excellently made. They're just wow. So again, Daniel, thank you very much.
Thanks, George.
And stay tuned for Ray Alexander and Fascinating Rhythm at the top of the hour. Now, before I go, I wanted to ask you, because I'm going to play this song by a local artist, and she's also a Kirtan singer. I ask a lot of my guests this, but we're short of time, but I still ask it. Would you consider the first doc your roomie's one thing? Do you know about that? It's where, like, if you haven't done your one thing, you could be as successful, you could do this, you could do that, but you'll never feel at peace or happy with the world. But if you did your one thing, that could be just a simple little helping somebody. It could be anything. And if you did that and you never did anything else, you would be at peace and happy with the world. It's a very interesting concept.
Yeah, I had a sense as I was creating it that, like, once it was created, then anything that happened after that is just kind of a bonus.
That's gravy. Yeah, I can relate. I'll just share this really quick story with you. When I first started the show, all I wanted to do was touch somebody on a spiritual level. And after our very first show, I walk in, well, actually it was the next day. So I walk into the studio, and that time it was in BC, where I was at. And somebody just written on it, torn it off like an envelope and said, I had a spiritual experience while listening to your show yesterday. And so I thought, well, now everything's gravy. Everything after that is gravy. The one thing is being attained. So, yeah, cool.
Wonderful.
Wonderful. Well, it was a great morning to be able to chat with you, Daniel. Thanks so much again for taking the time to share your sacred space with our sacred space.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.